Hello friends, today we are going to create a game of tic-tac-toe using JavaScript, HTML and CSS without using any framework or any external libraries. Hi, my name is Rohan Roy. I'm a web developer working from Munich. So why tic-tac-toe? Well, it's simple to play. It's just a grid. It's basically a grid where every player has to fill either an X or an O, and they take turns. And whenever a row or a column or a diagonal matches, then the game is won by the respective player. So simple enough from the user's perspective, but it has a lot of complex functionality in the background which we are going to be controlling using JavaScript. Okay, before we get to the fun part, that is the coding part of it, we will quickly discuss what the flow of the application will be and how the UI will look like. So let me transition to my screen. Okay, so here I have used an open source software called Pencil Project. So I will put the link down in the description. Let me quickly expand the zoom in basically. And yes, okay, so this represents the initialization of the application. So there will be two players, computer and user. There will be two options, X and O, and each player will have its respective option. There will be messages, which is won, lost, tie and empty. Each of these message will represent a certain status of the application, sorry, status of the game. So for now we can initialize the current player as user. You can do computer also, it's up to you. And message as empty, which represents that the game has not been started or is reset. I have broken this flowchart into sub processes. So for the first process, we have reset grid. So it can be either started from a button click or it can be started from another part of the application. First of all, we will reset the grid. We will swap the current player. So if it was computer, it will become user. If it was user, it will become computer. We will set the message as empty, and if we will check if the current player is computer or not. If it is, then we will initiate computer click grid cell, which we will get to later, or we will stop the process. After that, user selects a different option. So this process again will be initiated by the user. So if as a user I am being represented by X, and I want to select O, then I can do that, and vice versa. So user changes the option. We will check if the user option is X, then we will basically swap the options. User option will become O and computer option will become X. And if in case of no, it will be vice versa, and then we will initiate reset grid from here. Let us discuss computer click grid cell. When this process has been started, we will select all the empty grid cells, and then from that we will randomly select a cell and then initiate click grid cell process. So this is the click grid cell process. This can either be started by the user or when he clicks on a grid cell, or it can be started at the end of this process, computer click grid cell. We will select the grid cell, check if the grid cell is empty. If it is not empty, then we will move on to the next step. If it is empty, we will stop the process immediately. If it is not empty, then we will set the current player option to grid cell, and then initiate the process of check grid for success. After that, we will check if the message is empty or not. If it is empty, then we will check if the current player is user or not. If it is user, then we will initiate computer click grid cell. Why did we do that? Because the players play alternatively, right? If the current player is user, then the next turn is for computer and vice versa. So if it is not the current player is not user, then we will stop the process. If the message is not empty, then we will display whatever message is there and then disable the grid and stop. So in the game of tic-tac-toe, if any of the row matches or the column matches, or if any of the diagonal matches, then the game has been won. So in this process, check grid for success, we will first of all select the grid items and iterate through the rows. Here we will have we will iterate rows by row index, and then we will extract diagonal items left into a different array called left and right diagonal array. We will extract them. After that, we will iterate through the columns using column index and extract each item into a separate array called row and column array, right? If when we are done iterating through it, we will break out of this loop and check if the row or column matches. If it doesn't match, then we will initialize the row and column array back to empty, and then we will start continue the loop. If it any of them matches, then we will break out of the loop, or if we are done iterating through the loop, then also we will break out of this upper loop. Then we will check if the left or right diagonal or any row or column matches. If it matches, then we will check if the current player is user or not. If it is user, then we will set message as 1 and then disable the grid. If it is not user, that means computer has won, then we will say message set message as lost and then disable the grid. If left or right diagonal or any of the row doesn't match, row or column doesn't match, then we will check if the grid is full or not. If it is full, then we will set message as tie and then disable the grid. Otherwise, we will stop the process. Next, we will quickly add our application's UI design, how the UI will look like. So let me quickly go to the next page, that is the UI. You can also add the page from here, so I've already added that. Let me quickly create the grid, and I will copy and okay, after this I will add and h1 tag, which will give us the heading game of Tic Tac Toe, and I will realign it, increase the size, and after that I will also add a select button, which will help us help the user change his or her option. So let me X and reset. So this is approximately how the UI will look like, and I will put both this and the flowchart in a documentation folder and put it in the repository. I will put the link of the repository down in the description where you can find it. Okay, in this section we will begin our coding. So I personally use VS Code for it, but you can also use any other text editor. But when there are lots of files, you may want to use something like VS Code, which is built keeping this kind of code bases in mind. So I will put the link down in the description. A good alternative for this is maybe IntelliJ. So I will transition to my screen. Okay, here you can see I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I will initialize it as a repository. So basically what it will do is it initialized it as a Git. I will be able to manage versions on it. Any changes I do, I can basically use Git to manage the versions of it. In our case, there will be less files, but in case if there is a huge repository, you might want to keep track of who changed what, and similarly manage the code conflicts, for example. So basically what I will do is I will create a file index.html, and what I will do is so what I just did, I just clicked on exclamation point, and it automatically created the boiler code for it. And what I will do here is I will change the title to game, or just tic-tac-toe, maybe tic-tac-toe. Okay, so we had our design, so let me pull that up, and So this is the design that we kind of worked on, and this is our flow chart. We will get to that. So what are the features in it? So one there is a heading, there is one select button, one reset button, and then there are 9 buttons arranged in a grid. So that's what we are going to do. First we will put h1 tag, and yes, and I will name this as game of tic tac toe, along with, now we have options, right? Actions, excuse me. So I will put this inside a div container, which will say game actions, and inside this we will have a select with 2 options, and let's just name it to X, and O for now. We will give it some space and just put a B button. Okay, and we will name it reset, and along with this we will put a hexadecimal for it. So every character is internally represented by a hexadecimal code. There is not just alphanumeric characters that has this hexadecimal code behind it. We can represent, for example, emojis and stuff. What we will do is we will put this I searched a reset icon, you can do in the Google. So basically this hexadecimal will represent a reset icon. In an actual project, this may be SVG, or you may have a dedicated library, or you are using bootstrap icons. But for now, to keep it lightweight, we can just use hexadecimal for it. And I will save this, and I will give some space between the two and save it. Let's just resize the screens so it will be visible what we are doing. And let me, yeah, so we have a game of tic-tac-toe, select and then reset, and this is what I meant. There is a small icon, right? And let's just go back to the code and do the rest of it. We need to arrange buttons basically in a grid format. So for that I will do, so I will have 9 buttons for it, and right, so I have 9 buttons. So I will give it a class name as game grid. I will also give it a ID, because we need to select this from the from our JS code. So I will give it the same ID, game grid, and then we have our 9 buttons, right? Additionally, what we need to do is we need to put this inside a div, and I will name this as press tab to format this, and then class, let's just name it game container. Game container, yes. So we have our rough layout. Yeah, so we have a rough layout. Now we will we have to do the styling part of it. So let me just again do this. So I have a link, and I will put /styles.css. So I will just command click on it and create a file here, and inside that we can now format it like this. So first of all, the thing that comes to my mind is giving some basic styling to everything. Okay, so for that we need star selector, which will select everything and give some basic styling. So first of all we need box sizing. I will set to border box. So browser will have default styling as border box for some tags, and for some it will have content box. But we need to so it will make things easier for us, so just saying it like that. And I will give margin as 0 and padding as 0. Okay, you may be comfortable with the default values of the browser, a default styling of the browser. It's up to you, but I prefer to just customize whatever I want. I will reset the screen and see what happens. Yeah, so margin and stuff went away. Okay, after this we will arrange the game, this entire thing in a particular layout. Okay, so for that we will use dot game container, and we will give it display flex. It can be block, inline, flex, grid, stuff like that. So for now display flex is something that arranges our content in a certain format, like in a row format or a column format. So we will use display flex because it gives us certain advantages that we don't have to do ourselves. And I will align items. We don't need we need to give a direction first of all. So flex direction as column, so it will arrange in a certain way. It will arrange the entire thing in a column. And I will, do we need to center it maybe? So what I will do, I will put justify content as center and see what it does. It did nothing. Wait, was it align items? Yes. Yeah, so we have all our items in the middle of the screen now. Okay, so one of the reasons it is in the middle, so align items, so when we are using flex direction as column and when we set align items as center, so inside the flex body it will automatically shift the items to the center of the screen. Okay, so that is okay, that is fine. But what we also need is we need to set the width of the game container, right? So for that what I will do is I will set the width as maximum of the content. So right now maximum content is the h1 tag, so it will adjust based on it. And what I mean by that, I will give some different background color to the body and just quickly check what happens. So let's just give it gray and see what happens. Okay, so right, so it adjusted, and I will give the game container some different background. I will remove this for in a minute, but for now we can give it a background of say white. And let's see what the actual game, yeah, so it managed the width based on the maximum content. Okay, so I will remove this, and we need to center it to the we need to arrange it to the center of the screen, right? So what I will do is I will put margin, and we need to give horizontal margin and vertical margin and horizontal margin. I gestured in the opposite direction, but you get it. So horizontal and vertical, right? So vertical one I will give 1 rem, and horizontal I will give auto. So auto means it will automatically adjust based on the screen. I will refresh it. The size of the container is this much, but it will move it to the center of the screen. So that's what it did. Okay, and after that what I will do is we need to set the game grid, right? So I will set the game grid in a grid format. So for that we need 3x3, right? So first of all display grid, and I will put grid template columns, and we will use repeat function. We won't, so grid template columns, if I say 10 pixel, 10 pixel, 10 pixel, 10 pixel. If I repeat 10 pixel with spaces, then what it will do is it will create columns of 10 pixels, one after the other. So if I repeat it 5 times, it will do it for 5 times, right? So we don't have to manually repeat it. We can just use a function called repeat, which will take the first parameter as the number you want to repeat, and after that I have 8 rem, right? And I will set grid template row also same, repeat 3. So because we want a square grid with equal height and equal width, so the size will be the same, right? So I will set this and I will refresh my screen. Yes, so now you can see that the height, the width of the game container adjusted based on the width of the maximum content. Okay, so this is done, and I will give some gap so we can see it more clearly. 2 rem is too much. Okay, I will give it 2 pixel. It becomes weird. Okay, 2 pixel. So we can see that there are 9 buttons here, and I will give some space between these two, between these three things, and I will also arrange the select and reset in a specific way. So what I will do is I will use the game tag, game actions class here, and I will name it. First of all, I will use display flex. I really like flex, and I will give it flex direction. By default, the flex direction is always row. That means the items are arranged in a row. But let's just keep the code clean and define the flex direction as row, and I will give justify content as space between. Justify content, align items as say center. Let me just quickly check what I did wrong here. I will also set the width of the, it will take up the entire width of the parent. So let's just put the width. So now we can see that they are in a specific distance from each other. Give some padding to both select and reset, right? So I have dot game actions because I want to select uh, the select tag inside game actions, and I will give it some padding as say 1 rem, and I will also do the same for the button. Dot game action space button, and I gave it 1 rem padding. I will give it some font size as say 16 pixel, and I will also give let's just give it to everyone so we don't have to do it again and again. So we give font size as 16. That's about it. Do we need to give font weight? We can give it, let's just give it as bold. Don't do that in your real project, but since we know that the things are predictable here, so we can just do it like this. H1 tag will have something bigger, so we will just put, we have to pick up the h1 tag inside game container. So game container space h1, and I will give it font size of say 2.8 rem, and let's just see what happens. Oh yes, okay, and we need to give some space between these three, right? We decided that. So for that I will give margin bottom as 1 rem, and what else do we need? So apart from that, we need to give some space between the actions and grid, that I will also set as 1 rem, so just it will be consistent. Okay, so we now have our game of tic-tac-toe. in a grid format. So we have our basic design now. I will conclude this video here because the video is big enough already. And in the next portion, we will talk about the JavaScript part of the code, which will handle the actual logic behind the game. And I will put the link of the video down in the description. So I urge you to go and watch it. Finally, if you have any questions or just want to provide me with some feedback, please write them down in the comment section and I will get back to you. Please like this video, subscribe and hit the notification icon so you will be able to know whenever I publish a new video. Please share this video with your friends and family. This will help me grow my channel. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. Merry Christmas and a very happy new year. Namaskar.